Dr. Emmanuel Manny Hostin, an orthopedic surgeon and husband of The View co-host Sunny Hostin, is accused in December lawsuit fraudulently billing insurance. By the way, this is a Daily Caller story I'm reading. The lawsuit alleges Hostin knowingly provided fraudulent medical and other healthcare services in exchange for kickbacks and or compensation, and names him among nearly 200 defendants in one of New York's largest RICO cases.
For more, we go to our chief Sunny Hostin correspondent for a reaction.
Sunny Hostin must have felt like the universe had officially declared war on her reputation. Just when she thought her day couldn't possibly get worse, Gutfeld and Tyrus burst onto the scene, armed with flamethrowers of sarcasm and a wicked sense of humor. What followed wasn't just criticism, it was a full-scale comedy ambush that left no ego unscathed. Her husband's jaw-dropping $450 million zero-cents courtroom fiasco was merely the warm-up, and the real humiliation came roaring in like a storm. Tyrus launched brutal one-liners that sliced sharper than a judge's gavel, while Gutfeld fired off cutting remarks so fast it felt like watching verbal fireworks explode in real time. Through it all, Sunny sat frozen, her expression so blank it could have earned her an Oscar for Best Attempt at Acting Unbothered. But here's the real shocker. What scandalous twist could possibly send this chaos hurtling off the rails?
Only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, you know, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Doctors that want to do good, like my husband, you know, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid for the work that he's been trained his whole life to do.
And it is funny. She is so wrapped up in identity and she had no idea who she was.
Sunny Hostin has ruled The View for years like it's her very own Supreme Court of daytime drama. With a gavel in one hand and that air of untouchable authority in the other, she doesn't just offer opinions, she delivers full-blown judgments that echo across the set. One wrong take, and you might as well prepare your farewell brunch speech because you're done. But this week, the self-anointed queen of legal virtue found herself tangled in a scandal so colossal it could make daytime TV history, a jaw-dropping $450 million zero-cents courtroom catastrophe starring none other than her husband. The same courtroom where she spent years dishing out moral lectures suddenly turned into a public stage for her own personal downfall. The irony was so thick you could carve it with a gavel and still not reach the bottom. What once was her throne of righteousness had transformed into a witness stand of humiliation.
Or man that will go after white America and talk about them like dogs. That doesn't represent our ideals or values for anyone. And get rid of those people, and this will clear up real quick. So do you have to actually look in the mirror and clean up your own backyard and get the racist people out? Because that's who you allowed in. You allowed black racist on TV who could just go all day and say anything about white people. And I guess lo and behold, they forgot that there's a lot of people at home, white people at home during the day that are not watching your show anymore. So just clean it up.
Yeah, you know, Emily.
If you're enjoying this takedown, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Grab the popcorn, because Gutfeld and Tyrus didn't just show up. They ignited their sarcasm engines like they were gearing up to roast Mount Olympus itself. For years, Sunny has perfected the fine art of televised outrage on The View. Furious, offended, utterly scandalized, whatever emotion it took to claim the moral high ground on a show that often looked more like a verbal battleground than a friendly discussion. But now, karma has flipped the script. Her husband's alleged entanglement in a financial disaster so enormous it makes FTX look like a kid's lemonade stand has turned everything upside down. Suddenly, she's all about privacy and due process. How convenient. Imagine that. The Queen of Judgment now forced to play defense under the same spotlight she once wielded like a sword. The sharp-tongued critic has gone silent, her signature sass swapped for a shaky smile. The hypocrisy here is thicker than courtroom smoke. You'd need a bulldozer to clear it.
Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from Sunny Hostin. Sounds like a town. We're in Sunny Hostin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe. Makes Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by the view's gravitational pull.
When someone else is under public fire, Sunny turns into a storm of righteous fury, tossing out judgment like confetti at a scandal parade. But when the spotlight swings toward her own husband, suddenly it's radio silence. The woman who once prided herself on fearless commentary discovered the magical power of quiet. Impressive, really. Then, just as the awkward calm began to settle, Gutfeld and Tyrus arrived like a tag team of comedic chaos, ready to turn hypocrisy into their personal playground. Armed with enough sarcasm to power a small nation, they didn't hold back for a second. The pair dove into the situation like wolves circling an all-you-can-eat buffet of contradictions, shredding through Sunny's moral armor with every punchline. What once looked like confidence now resembled pure panic, and the audience could practically hear the sound of her composure cracking.
Their brains are small. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter. So instead...
The timing couldn't have been juicier or more devastating for Sunny. Gutfeld, the undisputed master of exposing media hypocrisy with sniper-like precision and stand-up comic swagger, practically threw a celebration on live TV. And Tyrus? He may as well have shown up with a bag of marshmallows to toast over the smoldering ruins of Sunny's credibility. Let's dive right into it. This $450 million 0-cents scandal is the kind of courtroom chaos you couldn't script if you tried. Reports and viral threads are lighting up the internet, claiming Sunny's husband has found himself trapped in a legal labyrinth so massive it makes Enron look like a typo in a tax form. Allegations swirl from financial mismanagement to whispers of fraud. But who's counting? Apparently not Sunny, who's suddenly quieter than a broken Alexa on mute. It's as if someone yanked the batteries out of her inner prosecutor and left her running on awkward smiles. The irony is almost poetic. This is the same woman who's built an empire, dissecting other people's legal disasters like a hawk circling roadkill. When a Republican sneezes in the wrong courtroom, she's halfway through her fiery monologue. But when her own backyard catches fire, suddenly it's not the right time to speculate. That's not irony. It's a full-on performance piece.
Sure, all that, and the price of butter. Sunny gets the game ball. If it wasn't for her, asking that question, it might have been a closer election. Listen, they're bitter, they're angry, they're entitled. They also should be. This should have been a reset for everyone who pushed lies and misinformation for the last. They call them Hitler. They call these things. America rejected them, and instead of coming back and saying we lied, they instead are now doubling down. So let her keep doing it, because if she keeps that up, we're going to keep getting the Senate and probably the House and the White House, because people see right through your lies. So keep doing what you're doing. Game ball to Sunny.
If hypocrisy were an Olympic event, Sunny would have just taken home the gold medal and maybe even set a new world record while she was at it. Greg Gutfeld dissected the situation with gleeful precision, his smirk practically glowing as he unraveled every double standard she'd ever thrown at someone else. Meanwhile, Tyrus stood by like a gladiator in a verbal arena, sharpening his wit like a blade, and when he struck, it was pure devastation. He didn't just highlight the scandal, he carved through layers of arrogance, self-righteousness, and the crumbling illusion of credibility. Watching him deliver those one-liners felt like seeing justice in real time. When the so-called Queen of Condescension finally lost her glittering crown to her own scandal, Tyrus was right there with a velvet pillow, ready to collect it with style. And let's not ignore the View co-hosts, the self-proclaimed guardians of morality, who went suspiciously silent faster than a power outage. Joy Behar, usually loud enough to rattle satellites, looked utterly stunned. Whoopi Goldberg, known for her dramatic monologues about virtue, could barely manage a shrug. The same crew who once unleashed fiery outrage over a conservative mispronouncing a word suddenly acted like they'd forgotten how to speak. Apparently, when the courtroom star is one of their own, outrage conveniently goes missing.
End of time. You're right. Anytime she says something stupid, I'm going to go, slave owner! Kat, just watched that. That's the second time I've watched that. She was tipped off beforehand, right? Because they had to tell her before, so she had time to regroup. They wouldn't just surprise. Really? You think? No?
I don't know. I feel like she could have maybe done better. Okay, here's the thing. One thing, and I would have even actually not give her any is she said, well, like, I guess that's just what they did back then.
Yeah.
She should have followed that up with saying something along the lines of, and I understand that that's a departure from the way I've talked about this before.
A $450 million zero-cent scandal exploding within their own ranks, and suddenly everything's complicated and nuanced. How perfectly convenient. Meanwhile, social media didn't just react, it erupted. The internet went ablaze faster than dry brush in a wildfire. Memes flooded every corner of Twitter. Timelines turned into roasting pits, and Greg Gutfeld, ever the strategist of satire, used the entire fiasco as ammunition to expose the absurdity of media elitism. He pointed out the glaring double standard that everyone could see coming from a mile away. Public figures demanding accountability, but only when they're not the ones under the microscope. The so-called moral high ground suddenly looked more like quicksand, collapsing beneath the weight of hypocrisy. With his razor-sharp wit, Gutfeld joked that a show built on truth and transparency had suddenly developed an acute case of selective laryngitis. Then came Tyrus, unleashing a rant so dry it could have qualified as a drought. He tore apart the notion of Sunny giving legal advice while allegedly helping to craft statements about her husband's misunderstood finances. The only thing spinning faster than the rumor mill was Sunny's moral compass. It looked like it was malfunctioning under courtroom pressure.
It's not even that. In The View, you don't need to find Trumpers. You need to fire your race baiters.
Yeah.
You need to fire the two races. You've had people. You had a McCain on there. You've had people on there before, and you ran them off. Mm-hmm. So the racist ones who want to stick to this, Whoopi and Sunny, and the, was it Bette Midler? What's her name? Yeah, broke-ass Bette Midler. Fire them and bring people in. Maybe you could get McCain to come back.
And the cherry on top of this chaotic Sunday, The View pretended it never happened, like the scandal simply didn't exist. Not a whisper, not a sigh, not even a passing comment about the $450 million zero-cents disaster tearing through Sunny's personal life. They can spend half an episode dissecting Taylor Swift's exes in microscopic detail, but suddenly, when it's one of their own under fire, their lips are sealed tighter than a lawyer's briefcase. Maybe they call it classy, or maybe it's just plain cowardice. You decide. Gutfeld closed his segment with poetic precision, asking if Sunny might care to join his show to talk about accountability, the sarcasm dripping so thick you could practically hear it sizzle. Tyrus didn't need to say much. His trademark smirk said it all. "We told you so." But here's the real kicker. This isn't just about Sunny. This mess throws a blinding spotlight on the entire hypocrisy circus parading through mainstream media. These so-called truth-tellers love preaching justice until their own closets start rattling with skeletons. They quote laws like scripture, but when the commandments hit too close to home, those rules suddenly vanish faster than ratings during commercial breaks.
That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years. She is shaming descendants of this. Will she continue to do that when she is now one of them, Dana? And it is funny. She's so wrapped up in identity, and she had no idea who she was.
Well, now we understand why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee.
Somewhere between Whoopi's dramatic eye rolls and Joy's wild tangents, Sunny sat frozen in her chair, like she'd just spotted her husband's bail terms printed right across her cue cards. And every time the conversation even tiptoed near words like fraud, corruption, or public embarrassment, Sunny suddenly became fascinated by the studio floor. That blank stare wasn't thoughtful reflection. It was silent panic, written all over her face. Spoiler alert, her disappearing act didn't work. Viewers noticed it, social media noticed it, and Greg Gutfeld definitely noticed it, because he doesn't miss a thing. Normally, Sunny's the first to jump in with her classic, "Actually, that's not how due process works." But now, the only thing she's defending is her poker face. And the best part? The due process this time isn't theoretical, it's her husband's real-life courtroom battle. The interruptions that once made her the loudest person on the panel now haunt her like legal ghosts. She sits, she blinks, she sips her oversized mug as if it's filled with invisibility potion, while millions of viewers sit glued to their screens, waiting for her to finally crack and shout objection at her own reflection. The silence isn't calm, it's suffocating, a desperate attempt to outlast a scandal that's already far too big to hide behind clever smiles and legal jargon.
Anna went in a different direction. But I love the fact that, you know, Manny is younger and he's
How
very...
much younger is he?
Just a little bit.
He's like 1 year, isn't he?
Like a month or a year or 10 years?
5 years.
It's more than a year.
Oh.
Anyway, it's not about me. I think.
Oh, no.
I think that it's very helpful that he's handy, and when we travel, I'm not picking up any bags. He's the one that's hefting them overhead. He
Exactly.
throws the garbage out.
Right.
He does the heavy stuff.
Sorry, Sunny, but you can't cross-examine karma, no matter how skilled your courtroom composure might be. Greg Gutfeld and Tyrus delivered the kind of poetic justice America didn't even realize it had been craving. In a world overflowing with double standards and self-righteous outrage, watching the self-appointed moral police trip over their own words feels almost therapeutic. Will Sunny bounce back from this catastrophe? Probably, because The View has a long history of forgiving its hosts, as long as they stick to the approved moral script. She might even rebrand this whole meltdown into a redemption arc, maybe a glossy magazine cover or a TED Talk titled "When Justice Hits Too Close to Home." But until then, the memes are multiplying, the internet's laughing non-stop, and Gutfeld and Tyrus are circling her hypocrisy like vultures armed with punchlines. Because here's the truth. When you spend your career handing out moral verdicts, eventually the gavel swings back your way. and for Sunny, it landed with the force of a scandal heard around the nation. So the next time The View launches into another holier-than-thou sermon, just remember, sometimes the loudest voices are the ones choking on their own contradictions, especially when Gutfeld and Tyrus are waiting in the wings, ready with the jokes, the receipts, and the popcorn.